Gdansk, Wrocław, Warsaw, Mysłowice. In these Polish cities and others, Islamic immigrants, mainly from North Africa and the Middle East, are increasing in number day by day. This is beginning to look familiar to residents of Western Europe, where aggressive, belligerent migrants have taken over the streets of cities and towns. That's why Polish people are protesting en masse.
I
don't feel safe, and I want to feel safe. I want my family, my countrymen, to feel safe in their own country. We do not agree to the forced relocation of illegal migrants. One question is being asked in many cities and towns across Poland. Will the streets of our cities soon be overrun by aggressive immigrants, as is happening in Western Europe? This influx is just beginning. We are talking so far about thousands, soon tens of thousands, and perhaps just next year hundreds of thousands of these people. The current ruling coalition is not dealing with this in any way. It has no plans, no prospects, and no real action. What's more, Prime Minister Donald Tusk's government is intimidating local government officials who oppose the construction of an integration centre for foreigners in their area. That is, places where illegal immigrants will be brought in, with financial penalties. This is a letter from the Marshal's office of the Łódź province to local government officials. Violation or non-compliance with the principle of non-discrimination is equivalent to exclusion from the possibility of applying for support from European Union funds. I am even very optimistic. I personally would very much like this centre to be built. It is not that I am hiding something. No, I'm an ardent supporter. If only it is the will of those in power to establish such a centre, then it would be a great solution. Such solutions have led to many tragedies in Western Europe, murders, rapes, robberies and the like. Countries like Sweden, France or the United Kingdom have so far utterly failed to deal with the problem. Germany is trying to solve their own migrant problem, at least in part by dumping their problem migrants in Poland, counting on the current Donald Tusk government's passive foreign policy, which is frequently downright submissive towards Poland's Western neighbours. This is a huge threat because it is uncontrolled. One can even say it is an invasion by illegal migrants. Germany has joined in here and they are trafficking these migrants completely uncontrolled. And the threat is only growing because Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko has just announced the admission of 150,000 migrants from Pakistan. Soon we can expect mass stormings of the Polish border and more provocations coming from Belarus. Certainly, the Belarusians will try to smuggle these migrants into Poland in a more sophisticated way. Perhaps they will want to use them for some propaganda activities, to force Polish soldiers, border guards or policemen to use force. The problem is that Donald Tusk's coalition government, currently in power in Poland, doesn't recognise these threats and is unlikely to change course as long as it is in the interests of Berlin and Brussels to funnel as many migrants as possible into Poland. Why the countries of Western Europe want to flood Poland with migrants, one can only speculate. Ahead of Easter, the prices of butter, oil and fruit are rising the steepest. The increases are huge, with butter alone going up almost a third this year compared to last year. According to Deputy Agriculture Minister Michał Kołodziejczak, Donald Tusk's government is not to blame for the high prices. The culprits are entrepreneurs. Butter should have cheapened by about 15% since December. It hasn't cheapened because stores often use these products to make a promotion in a short period of time and thus attract customers who will buy a few sticks of butter at 4,75 zloty, but in the process shop and overpay for other products. It seems that the official explanation for rising inflation is price gouging by greedy stores. Few economists take such explanations seriously. Butter prices are high because of rising global demand, rising production costs, rising transportation costs, and rising employment. More and more Polish families are planning to cut back on holiday spending. Nearly 16% of respondents will spend an average of 200 to 300 zloty per family member on Easter shopping. Slightly fewer, more than 14%, plan to spend between 150 and 200 zloty per person. Nearly 1 in 10 Poles plans to spend just 100 zloty or less on Easter shopping. This is a clear sign that many households are finding it increasingly difficult to fit into the Easter budget. For one person, this is a very big expense. You have to cut back hard. Well, what else is there to say?
No I cóż tu powiedzieć?
Promocji szukam,
I look for discounts. I even collect newspapers to see where something is cheap.
żeby sprawdzić, gdzie coś jest taniej.
One solution to overpricing could be to change the rate of value-added tax or VAT on food.
Nie stać rządu na to, aby zrealizować mój...
The government cannot afford to implement my demand for 0% of VAT on food, while it can afford Donald Tusk's government paying prosecutors for political purposes.
prokuratorów, którzy wykonują zadania polityczne i partyjne.
The economic situation of many Poles is difficult, and citizens are demanding that the government intervene
By ludziom żyło się łatwiej.
in order to make people's lives easier so that people have more money in their pockets. The natural course is that the tax on food must be abolished, because then that food will be cheaper.
Ponieważ wtedy ta żywność będzie tańsza.
In February this year, the Central Statistical Office changed its methodology for calculating inflation. The opposition warns that although the officials' figures now show inflation below 5%, the reality is less optimistic. According to the old methodology, inflation is at 5.5%.
My pokazywaliśmy, w jaki sposób można wpływać na...
We showed how these prices can be influenced, while the new rulers believe that inflation can be influenced by changing the chairman of the Central Statistical Office.
Głównego Urzędu Statystycznego.
Ahead of Easter, Polish families are forced to contend with rising prices, and attempts to tamper with statistics will not change the hard facts. Donald Tusk's government faces a key challenge. Either it can cope with rising prices, or it will be judged by voters who won't fill their refrigerators with cooked items. Women's rights activists celebrated outside the United Kingdom's highest court on Wednesday after it ruled that the definition of a woman under equality legislation referred to biological sex.
The terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not.
The Supreme Court's judgment related to whether a so-called trans woman, in other words, a man who wishes to be identified as a woman with a gender recognition certificate, a formal document that gives legal recognition of someone's new gender, is protected from discrimination as a woman under Britain's 2010 Equality Act. The ruling said trans people would not be disadvantaged by its landmark decision, which is the latest example of the wider culture war around transgender rights ending up before the court.
Really simple. In the judgment, it was read out that the problem of any other interpretation was that it would have given trans people more rights than other people. So this just sets it back to square one. Everyone has equal rights. Not one group is privileged over another.
The ruling is seen by many women's rights advocacy groups worldwide as an unequivocal victory, and while the United Kingdom Supreme Court did indeed choose to protect women's rights, a close look at the actual law being interpreted reveals a messier, more complicated image. The law in question is the Equality Act of 2010, which in broad strokes aims to protect certain protected groups against discrimination. These groups include disabled people, religious minorities, and, crucially in this case, women. One of the major points is to protect them from workplace discrimination, for example, from them receiving lower pay.
And we just need protections based on that. And I think that, we are more than happy for safe services and spaces to be provided for other groups of people depending on their needs.
The law has over the years been abused numerous times in order to extract many millions of pounds worth of payouts based on supposed gender-based discrimination by UK companies. Infamously, it is the Equality Act of 2010 that is one of the centrepieces of the continuing Birmingham bin strike, where garbage collectors in Birmingham have been on strike for weeks in response to planned pay cuts. Since the law's introduction, Birmingham Council has been saddled with over £1 billion worth of equal pay claims. Often, the crux of these cases is that jobs whose workforces skew male receive higher pay than jobs whose workforces skew female.
It's been nearly 8 weeks now. We've had rubbish accumulated. Sometimes they come along 2-3 weeks later, take it, but obviously now it's getting even worse because the bins are full. The recycling in some of the bins is still there, starting to smell.
These numerous equal pay cases have caused major budgetary issues for Birmingham Council. They were forced to cut expenses wherever they could. Ultimately, it fell on the bin collectors, many of whom were to receive substantial pay cuts. The Binmen's Labour Union objected and initiated a strike, which continues to this day.
Just pay money, obviously. They deserve the pay. It's not an easy thing to do, is it? Look, we're doing their work. I know how hard it is. I will lift four for the bill line as well. And it's not easy. And then they got to do this 7 days a week, isn't it?
Birmingham Council has yet to put forward an offer the Birmingham binmen find acceptable, and the binmen are not backing down. This standoff carries on, all the while rubbish festers in the streets. And all this is caused by people exploiting a short-sighted law that heavily incentivised filing cases over contrived issues in the hope of a payout. While the UK Supreme Court's decision from the 16th of April, celebrated by many as a victory in the culture wars, and others celebrate on women's rights grounds, it is worth considering whether this piece of anti-discrimination legislation is even a good thing at all, at least in its current form. Taal is one of the Philippines' most active and dangerous volcanoes. Located just 60 kilometers south of Manila, it is surrounded by a lake whose temperature is constantly rising. About 450,000 people live in its shadow. In the past, it has triggered not just eruptions, but also shockwaves, mudslides, and ash rains that have paralyzed the country. It looks calm, but under this water, the pressure is rising. Taal is moving again. 20 tremors have been registered in the last 24 hours. Gas is rising from the crater. The column of sulfuric vapor reaches almost a kilometer upwards. Sulfur dioxide emissions are at a level of over 1,200 tons per day. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology maintains an alert level of 1, which does not mean that there is no danger. It means the volcano is active, and no one knows whether this is a prelude or just a reminder that below the surface magma does not sleep. Entering the island is strictly forbidden. Fishing and swimming are also banned. Taal doesn't give a second chance. A warning will only come when it's too late. The volcano Taal has erupted more than 30 times since the 16th century. Although its height is less than 400 meters, it is one of the world's most unpredictable volcanoes because of its geological arrangement, with a caldera and underground magma reservoirs. Experts monitor it 24/7. Many people were affected during the eruption. The wave of ash reached as far as Manila's metro, and in Cabuno, Laguna, everything was covered with a thick layer of grey dust, so thick that it's hard to describe, as if we suddenly found ourselves on another planet. Before people could return to work, everything had to be cleaned up, and this was not easy. The ash was everywhere, in houses, on roofs, in people's lungs.
Before we start working.
In January 2020, when Taal last seriously erupted, more than 376,000 people were evacuated. Schools, roads and medical facilities were destroyed overnight. According to the Philippine government, losses reached about $60 million. The water in the lake changed its chemical composition. The concentration of heavy metals increased, and the temperature near the surface reached 40 degrees. Here there are thousands of people living around this lake. You saw for yourself as you swam. There used to be plenty of boats, fish. Today all is gone. No one knows when it will erupt again, and that's why they are afraid. They lost a lot, and from the point of view of tourism and daily life, the impact was very big. Here, thousands of families live from fishing. Fishing has been banned, and the fish, even if present, is not fit for consumption. The water is too acidic. Tourism, which used to be the lifeblood of the region, has virtually died out. Before, boats flowed daily. Now, the marinas have turned quiet and deserted. That day, my brother and I stood watching the volcano erupt. We had no idea what to do. Suddenly, a lot of policemen and soldiers arrived, and we were evacuated, all of us. We had to leave everything and run away. The early warning system works, but not everywhere. In 2020, many residents found out about the threat from the radio or from neighbours. Not everyone had transportation. Not everyone made it in time. Some people returned home, only to bury loved ones.
We scared because our family...
Of course we were afraid, because my family was trapped here. Not everyone survived that day. Today, Taal is awakening again. For thousands of people in the area, that's reason enough to live in readiness. For scientists, it's a challenge. Taal does not always warm. And when it falls silent, that's when you have to listen most carefully.